Mana, the resource that makes the magic the world go round, but how well do you pay attention to it as you build your decks? Thank you for heeding the Twilight's call and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're continuing our deck building series with video number 3. The focus of today's video is on mana bases, and if you play Magic, you obviously understand why we need mana, but do you pay attention to your mana base outside of the colors it produces for your deck? Many people don't, and they just simply grab as many non-basics and mana rocks that produce the colors in their decks, and then backfill the rest with basics and colorless rocks and just go with it. And this works to an extent, but there's a little more to it than that. First, let's examine what kind of deck we are using. If this deck is for casual play, tuned play, or competitive EDH, which one are you playing? This matters because depending on the deck you're playing and your play group style, you could be overdoing it or even hamstringing yourself during a game. In casual games, you're going to want to look at the land base and rocks and see how much mana these things produce against their mana cost. Do they produce more than they cost? Then you're likely pushing your mana base out of the casual range for most players. The only exception I'd make to this is probably Sol Ring. Yes, it's a contentious issue, but it is so ubiquitous in the format of Commander because it's included with every single precon. It just feels like you're gonna hamstring yourself by not doing it, and it's kind of arbitrary to say, no, you shouldn't play this card when it's everywhere. In the meanwhile, though, leave your mana crypts, your ancient tombs, and other fast mana stuff out of the casual play groups. Those are a little too much there. Instead, use things like the bounce lands from Ravnica or mana rocks like Cold Steel Heart or Fellwar Stone for your casual groups. I would also look at the colors of your deck too. Usually the more colors a land produces or has the ability to access, the more expensive and less likely casual players would have access to them. If your deck is 3 or more colors, leave out the cycling tri-lands, the fetch lands, the shocks. They're a little much for the casual format. Instead, let's break out pain lands from like the original Apocalypse grouping, or the Khans tri-lands that don't have cycling, or even the MDFC lands that were introduced with Zendikar. If you're playing a toon deck or a competitive EDH deck, then feel free to jam whatever you like in your deck that matches the power level you're playing at. The next thing I would look at is density, and no, I'm not saying that you're thick-headed. What I mean is, do you have the right number of lands, mana rocks, and ramp to keep your deck churning? I cringe at seeing deck lists for Commander that have 28 lands, 30 lands. Just repeat after me. That is not enough land. Unless your deck consists of only 3 drops or less, and you run every single good mana rock printed in the game, you're going to lower the deck's ability to consistently play out your threats by playing too few lands. I know it's fun jamming these big, cool spells into your deck and keep adding more and more and more of them, but those spells are not cool if you can't cast them and they're stranded in your hand. This becomes especially true if you're slinging spells with huge mana costs. Don't cram big spells like Clone Legion or big 7-drop dragons unless you're prepared to supply them with enough mana to cast them. Most decks that I build as a rule in Commander start at 37 to 38 lands plus 5 to 7 mana rocks or fetch abilities in green. Even with the MDFC land cards where they have a spell on the front and a land on the back, I would start at the low end of 37. I want the ability to cast a lot of those MDFCs for their spell effects rather than have to burn them as a land. The third and last point I want to make here, you need to look at the color balance of your deck. If you've fixed the base to match your play group and you fix the land counts, what about the colors that they produce? You can put together a really nice, really expensive mana base, but it doesn't matter if you can't get the correct color access as you play the game. Depending on your deck building style, see the first video of this series, you can either lay out the deck and see what you have on hand, or look at the deck list on screen and see what kind of lands and stuff the majority of your deck is. Let's use Keza Augur of Agonies as an example. I've ripped my deck apart and noticed that I have a lot of blue, a slightly less amount of black, and a lot less white in the deck. So I'm going to want to make sure that my mana base leans heavily more towards the blue-black side and less towards the white side. Otherwise, I could have a bunch of white mana and not enough blue and black to cast my spells. Because besides getting mana screwed where you're not drawing lands at all, nothing sucks more than to have a grip full of cards that you can't cast because you have a bunch of different color symbols that you can't access on time. With that last little bit of advice, today's video is coming to a close. Are there any other constraints with mana bases that I missed? Please discuss them in the comments below, and as always, thank you for watching, and if you like this video, please share, comment, and subscribe. Keep an eye out for the next video in this series, and have a great day.